So I thought it'd be interesting to start with the role and the relationship really between science and policy. If we want to move forward, how do we connect these two perspectives and begin to speak the same language?
Scientists have to acknowledge that in the public realm, you have to come up with conclusions that are tentative perhaps, qualify them perhaps, but still willing to say, this is my conclusion right now.
I think timing is one of the key issues that needs to be bridged between science and policy. There really isn't time to wait 6 months until better information comes along, because that window of decision making that the policymakers have may close, and a decision may in fact never get made if it passes.
We've seen from the debate on climate change that actually the scientific viewpoint has a much more difficult time cutting through now the noise that can be created and generated by various interests, and also find some unity, some ways of getting across a unified voice. Because it's very clear that the way the scientific voice currently comes across, it's very easily countered by people who have become almost geniuses at sort of creating a kind of counter narrative or a great deal of confusion around debates.
How big a challenge is cross-jurisdictional collaboration?
It seems that jurisdictions that do well are ones that are dedicated and devoted to solving a problem, often out of need. There's an acute problem that everyone can get behind. I'm thinking Israel is a very water scarce country that manages water very well out of need. It's something that they absolutely have to do.
Canada and the United States have been cooperating on the management of waterfowl. And the reason is that ducks and geese don't respect national boundaries. Of course, they spawn in the north of Canada. They spend their winters in the south of the U.S. Actually, quite a lot, like us, some of us anyway. And of course, therefore, if you want to manage ducks and manage geese, you can't just adopt a national approach. You have to acknowledge that they span both nations. So I like to feel that you can have as good a relationship as you want. My feeling is that not everybody wants one, and I think that's where the problem lies.
In principle, actually, water management should be a federal or national government issue on both sides of the border. In practice, it's largely been devolved to state and provincial jurisdictions. The effort on Lake Winnipeg is very fragmented. Very fragmented in the sense that many scientists who study it are very reluctant to play a more public role in explaining the significance of the research they do. Very fragmented in the sense that many NGOs don't work out of the same framework or collaborate on what kinds of initiatives are contributing to an end result.
Much of the pollution that ends up in Lake Winnipeg originates from the city of Winnipeg. If we can store water on the landscape far away, we can redirect a lot of the nutrients that would otherwise end up in our lake. Well, one of the ways is to create wetlands.
The situation with water is fluid.
Nice. Tonight.
Yeah, that'll be the only one tonight, I'm afraid. And new things are happening. I mean, we weren't necessarily talking about invasive species in Lake Winnipeg 2 years ago to the extent that we are now.
I don't know if you knew this, but the city of Winnipeg is not in a conservation district. The city of Winnipeg is at least 3/4 of Manitoba's population. 3/4 of Manitoba's population, therefore, is not in a position to be engaged at the grassroots level in the conservation district program. Most of the funding comes from the provincial government, and the municipal partner provides relatively little. There needs to be a change in the legislation to allow the municipality to take in the lion's share. And in this case, Winnipeg could easily pay the lion's share of the funding for a conservation district, and should. And it seems to me that's where you could all engage at the political level, is to lobby your government to get Winnipeg into a conservation district.
Thank you so much for your expertise and your thoughts tonight.